Hey guys, tonight we embark on a journey to explore an ancient path to peace, one that traces back to the streets of Rome, where thinkers sought meaning amid chaos. Now, you might be wondering, why should I care about ancient philosophy, especially when I can barely get through a Monday morning meeting? Well, just trust me on this one. You might even find yourself reflecting on it the next time your boss sends that stress-inducing email or when the subway is packed like sardines. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from tonight. Drop your location and local time in the comments. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Let's start by diving into the world of Stoic philosophy, a school of thought born in ancient Greece but fully embraced by the Romans. It all began with a man named Zeno of Citium, a wealthy merchant who had it all, until he lost everything in a shipwreck. In the wake of this personal disaster, Zeno wandered into a bookstore, and that's where he found his calling: philosophy. Stoicism, as he would later teach it, wasn't about avoiding hardship, but about how we respond to it. The central idea of Stoicism is this: the only thing in our control is our own mind. The external world, your job, your relationships, the weather, whether or not your favorite coffee shop runs out of oat milk, none of that is truly in your control. What you can control, however, is your reaction to these events. Imagine sitting on your couch after a long day, and instead of stewing in frustration over everything that went wrong, you choose calm. That's Stoicism in action. Taking a deep breath, realizing you cannot change the past, and deciding not to let those annoyances affect your peace of mind. The Stoics called this maintaining apatheia, a state of calm and peace, free from the storm of irrational emotions. It's not that Stoics didn't feel things, but rather they didn't allow those feelings to control them. They mastered their emotions, rather than being slaves to them. This isn't some everything is fine attitude. Oh no, Stoicism is a realistic philosophy, which is why it resonates so deeply even today. The Stoics weren't out there dreaming of a perfect world where everything always goes right. Instead, they realized life is hard. People disappoint you, bad things happen, and you'll probably stub your toe on your way to the bathroom in the middle of the night. It's inevitable. What Stoicism teaches is how to deal with that reality in a way that keeps you grounded, calm, and at peace. Now, you might be thinking, okay, sounds great, but how does that actually work? That's where the practice of Stoicism comes into play. Stoic philosophy isn't just for the philosopher in his ivory tower. It's for the person who's sitting in traffic, feeling the heat of frustration rise with every honk of the horn. Or the person who has had a tough day at work and can't shake the nagging feeling that they're not living up to expectations. Stoicism is a toolkit for those moments. It teaches you how to breathe, assess, and make peace with the fact that you cannot control the chaos around you. The best part? You can start practicing this stuff today. No degree in philosophy required. The Stoics were really big on keeping things simple and focused. They didn't believe in a life filled with luxury and indulgence. They saw this as a distraction from what truly mattered: developing wisdom and virtue. They believed that by living virtuously, acting with courage, justice, wisdom, and moderation, we can achieve the kind of peace that comes not from the external world, but from within. So, imagine this. You're standing in a long line at the grocery store, and you're not sure if the cashier is moving at the speed of light or in slow motion. Your immediate reaction might be to sigh, tap your foot, or start looking at your watch. But with the Stoic mindset, you pause, take a deep breath, and remind yourself, I can't control how fast the line moves, but I can control my response. You start thinking, maybe this is the perfect moment to slow down and be present. After all, where else do I have to be right now? You shift your focus, and the frustration that was threatening to bubble up melts away. This is the kind of small but significant shift that Stoic practice can bring. It might sound simple, even trivial, but these small shifts in how we perceive the world can add up to a life lived with more peace. The Stoics weren't after fleeting happiness, but lasting tranquility. That's the real beauty of Stoicism. It's not a quick-fix philosophy. It's about creating long-term habits that let you face life's challenges with resilience and wisdom. In this journey tonight, we're going to meet some of the greatest Stoic minds in history. People like Seneca, Epictetus, and even Marcus Aurelius, who took these teachings and applied them to their own lives, often in the most extreme circumstances. Through their stories, we'll learn how Stoicism doesn't just apply to philosophy students, but to everyone, from emperors to slaves, warriors to everyday folks just trying to make it through the day. First, we'll start with Seneca, the Roman philosopher who was not only a teacher of Stoicism, but a politician and playwright. Seneca had an incredible life, full of power, wealth, and extreme personal tragedy. His life was hardly peaceful or uneventful, yet he applied Stoic principles to get through it all. In his writings, we find guidance on how to manage our emotions and live with a sense of calm and purpose, even when everything around us is falling apart. His letters to Lucilius, filled with Stoic wisdom, offer a rare and personal glimpse into how he dealt with the trials of life. These aren't just abstract lessons. They're practical tools Seneca used to navigate the complexities of his own existence. Next, we'll turn our attention to Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most famous Stoic philosophers. His story is one of resilience and inner freedom, teaching that no matter how cruel or unjust the world may seem, we always have control over our own mind. Epictetus believed that our happiness depends not on external circumstances, but on how we interpret and respond to those circumstances. His teachings were focused on living according to nature, being true to ourselves, and finding peace even in the most challenging situations. Finally, we'll meet Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor who embodied Stoicism in both his leadership and personal life. He wrote a series of meditations to himself, reminding himself of the Stoic principles he sought to live by. These meditations, which have survived for over 2,000 years, offer a window into the mind of one of history's most powerful figures. Despite being emperor of the Roman Empire, Marcus Aurelius faced the same trials and temptations that we all do today. Yet, he managed to find peace, even in the midst of the chaos of ruling an empire at war. Together, these Stoic philosophers form a rich legacy that can teach us how to live well, no matter what life throws our way. Their words and examples offer timeless wisdom, teaching us to face challenges, embrace hardship, and find contentment in the face of adversity. So, as we continue on this journey through the world of Stoic philosophy, keep in mind that these ancient teachings are just as relevant now as they were over 2 millennia ago. Now that you're settled into the Stoic mindset, let's explore the foundations of Stoicism a little deeper. You see, this philosophy didn't just pop up overnight. It was built over centuries, drawing from earlier Greek philosophies like Cynicism and Socratic thought. The Stoics took a little bit from everyone but made it their own. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, didn't just sit in a dusty corner and write a book. He lived his philosophy. After that shipwreck, Zeno wandered into a bookstore in Athens and started reading. Now, think about that. One moment, Zeno had it all, and the next, he's literally washed up on the shore with nothing. Yet, it was that very disaster that set him on his path to philosophical greatness. Zeno began teaching at a public space called the Stoa Poikile. Imagine a big, open-air building where the crowds could gather, and Zeno would drop some serious wisdom, laying the foundation for what would become Stoicism. His main message: virtue is the only true good, and everything else is secondary. To Zeno, living virtuously wasn't just about being nice or moral in the traditional sense. It was about aligning with nature's order, accepting what is, and working towards inner harmony. Sounds simple, right? Well, the simplicity of Stoicism hides some really profound depths. Take a step back and imagine you're walking through the streets of ancient Athens, gathering your thoughts. You're surrounded by philosophy lovers and curious minds, trying to make sense of this new teaching. Stoicism is all about accepting the world as it is and understanding what's in your control and what isn't. For Zeno, this acceptance didn't mean being passive. Instead, it was about actively choosing how to respond to whatever life throws your way. That's the foundation. Now, Zeno's successor Cleanthes wasn't quite as popular in the mainstream world, but his ideas were just as vital to the development of Stoicism. Cleanthes emphasized the role of nature in Stoic thought, how everything in the universe was part of a grand, interconnected whole. The Stoics believed that to live in accordance with nature was to live in a way that was rational, purposeful, and aligned with cosmic order. Imagine for a second that you're a tiny speck in the vast universe. Yet, you have a role to play. Every action, every thought should contribute to the whole, as it's all interconnected. But it wasn't just about philosophy for philosophy's sake. Stoicism was practical. It was designed to help people, ordinary people like you and me, live better lives. So, what makes Stoicism unique is its focus on practicality. It's not a theory to be debated over cups of wine. It's a way of living that promises peace in the midst of chaos. You don't have to be a philosopher to use Stoicism. You just have to choose it, every day, in every moment. As Stoicism evolved, it began to take shape under the guidance of two main schools of thought. The early Stoa, which includes Zeno and Cleanthes, and the later thinkers like Epictetus and Seneca. They pushed Stoicism beyond its Greek roots and integrated it with Roman culture, making it even more practical for those living through the complexity of Roman society. Now, let's step into the shoes of Seneca, a man who lived the high life in Rome, yet one of his central teachings was about not getting lost in material wealth and fame. Seneca, despite his position as a political figure and wealthy man, often wrote about the dangers of luxury. In fact, he famously said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Imagine that. Here's a guy who had everything and still told people to stop chasing after more. It's as if Seneca were standing right in front of us today, warning us about the endless cycle of wanting more, more, more. He knew that true wealth came from wisdom and virtue, not gold and fame. But Seneca didn't just preach this to others. He lived it himself. His letters to Lucilius, filled with Stoic wisdom, remind us that happiness isn't found in the pursuit of more possessions or power, but in the cultivation of a good mind and a virtuous life. He lived through many personal struggles, from political exile to family drama, and still found ways to put Stoic principles into practice. Seneca had the luxury of Roman high society, but it was clear that for him this wasn't the source of happiness. His legacy is that of a man who faced hardship with grace, who showed us that the path to happiness doesn't come from what we own, but from how we choose to live. And here's the kicker. Seneca wasn't shy about the fact that we all struggle. We all feel lost sometimes. That's part of being human. Stoicism isn't about pretending that everything is perfect. It's about accepting the imperfect and choosing to respond with wisdom, patience, and self-control. So, next time you're facing an annoying situation, whether it's a bad commute or a difficult conversation with a friend, remember Seneca's words. It's not about controlling everything around you. It's about controlling how you respond. As we continue our journey through Stoic thought, we'll get to know Epictetus, the former slave who became one of the most influential philosophers of all time. But for now, think about this. The Stoics didn't give you a roadmap for avoiding problems. No, they gave you a way to deal with them, head on with a clear mind and an open heart. Remember that feeling of frustration in traffic? That's a perfect moment to practice Stoicism. You're not going to control the cars around you, but you can control your mind, your thoughts, and your responses. And in that, you'll find the peace the Stoics promised. Now that we've covered the foundational concepts of Stoicism, let's dive into the life of one of the most notable figures in the philosophy, Epictetus. This guy's story isn't just remarkable because of his teachings, but because of his life. You're about to learn about a man who, despite being born into slavery, managed to achieve freedom, not just physically, but mentally and spiritually. Epictetus was born around 55 CE in what is now Turkey. As a child, he was enslaved and sold to a wealthy Roman named Epaphroditus, who worked for the Emperor Nero. So, yeah, Epictetus wasn't exactly living the dream. But what makes his story fascinating is how he responded to the circumstances he had no control over. He didn't let his external situation, being a slave, define his inner peace. Instead, he took control of the one thing he could, his mind. Imagine being in Epictetus's shoes. You're at the mercy of your master, yet you have this quiet, unshakable peace inside you. Most people in his situation would have been angry, frustrated, or resentful. But Epictetus was different. He saw his external circumstances as something outside of his control, and he chose to focus on the one thing that mattered most: his ability to think, reflect, and choose his response to what was happening around him. Epictetus's most famous lesson revolves around the dichotomy of control, the idea that some things are in our control and some things aren't. The Stoics believed that the only thing that truly belongs to us is our thoughts, choices, and responses. Everything else, the weather, other people's actions, the traffic, your boss's mood, is beyond your control. For Epictetus, this understanding was key to achieving inner freedom. He knew that if he focused on what he could control, his thoughts and actions, he could maintain peace of mind no matter how tough things got. Epictetus didn't just philosophize about this, he lived it. After gaining his freedom, he became a teacher, sharing his wisdom with anyone who would listen. He taught that suffering was inevitable, but that we could always choose how to interpret and react to suffering. His teachings were practical, focusing on everyday life. He didn't preach some far-off abstract ideal. He was about doing the work to cultivate inner peace, no matter how chaotic life might be. One of his most famous quotes sums this up perfectly. "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Think about that for a moment. Imagine your life as a movie. There's a plot, but the director is you. You can't change the script, but you can choose how to respond to every scene. You can choose to be the hero or the villain, to get stuck in despair or rise above it. This mindset, that you're the one who determines your fate through your response, was Epictetus's gift to the world. Now, let's zoom in on one of his key teachings, the difference between things that are up to us and things that are not. When you break it down, it's incredibly simple yet transformative. Epictetus argued that we can control our actions, our beliefs, our judgments, and our reactions. But what we can't control is external events. You can't control the weather. You can't control how people treat you. You can't control the fact that your favorite show is getting canceled. I know, it's hard. But you can control how you respond to these things. This is where the Stoic power lies. Think about your day-to-day life. How often do you get upset over things that are outside your control? A bad driver cuts you off on the highway. Your coworker takes credit for your work. Your friend cancels plans last minute. These things happen, and while they may upset you, they don't need to define your mood or your actions. Epictetus taught that you don't need to give your peace away to other people or events. You can remain steadfast in your own sense of tranquility, no matter the chaos around you. Epictetus didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk. His life wasn't about avoiding pain or hardship, but about enduring them with grace and dignity. For example, he had a physical disability. It's said that his leg was injured during his time as a slave, and yet he didn't let that prevent him from living a full life or teaching his philosophy. His resilience in the face of personal adversity was a living testament to the Stoic belief that virtue, living with wisdom, courage, and temperance, is the highest good, far above comfort or material wealth. You might be wondering, okay, that's all well and good for Epictetus, but how does that apply to me? Well, think about the times in your life when things don't go the way you want. How do you react? Do you get upset and frustrated, or do you take a step back, recognize what's in your control, and choose how to respond? When life throws you a curveball, whether it's a stressful work situation, an unexpected expense, or a relationship problem, Epictetus would encourage you to take a breath and think, how can I respond in a way that maintains my inner peace? This doesn't mean you should ignore your emotions. Stoicism isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about not letting them control you. The goal is to observe your feelings without letting them dictate your actions. So, when that angry feeling rises in your chest, instead of letting it erupt, take a moment to pause, breathe, and decide what's the best response, not only for the situation, but for your own peace of mind. Epictetus's teachings are timeless because they address something deeply human, our struggle to accept things we can't control. He wasn't telling people to give up or be passive. Instead, he taught them to take responsibility for what they can control and let go of what they can't. Imagine how much lighter life would feel if you could adopt that mindset. Let's take a pause and reflect. The next time you're faced with a challenging situation, whether it's a stressful event at work or a personal conflict, try applying Epictetus's dichotomy of control. Can you control the situation? Number. But you can control how you react. That's where your real power lies. It's like standing in the middle of a storm with an umbrella. While you can't stop the rain, you can decide how to protect yourself. So, the next time you face a tough situation, remember Epictetus's wisdom. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Now, let's take a step forward into the world of Seneca, one of the most influential Stoic philosophers. Unlike Epictetus, who came from humble beginnings, Seneca was born into wealth and power. He served as an advisor to Emperor Nero, one of Rome's most infamous emperors. Seneca had everything that most people could ever want: riches, fame, and political influence. But, as we'll see, the pursuit of wealth and success didn't necessarily bring him happiness. In fact, it was precisely these luxuries that Seneca warned against in his writings. He believed that excessive wealth and power were distractions from living a virtuous, meaningful life. Seneca's life was filled with dramatic twists. Despite his wealth and status, he experienced periods of exile, political betrayal, and personal loss. He didn't live a cushy life in a palace. His life was full of struggle. What's remarkable, though, is how Seneca applied Stoicism to navigate these challenges. Through it all, he kept writing, offering wisdom not just to the elite, but to anyone who sought peace of mind. Let's start with one of Seneca's core teachings: the idea that money and material possessions are not the source of happiness. While many of us would love a little more cash in the bank or the perfect job, Seneca cautioned against the pursuit of external wealth. He argued that we often think we'll be happy once we acquire certain things, whether it's a better job, a bigger house, or more status. But, as he said, it is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor. Imagine living in Rome during Seneca's time. You're surrounded by extravagance, golden statues, elaborate feasts, and political power. Yet, here's Seneca, writing letters to his friends, urging them to resist the temptation of wealth and materialism. He believed that true wealth wasn't about how much money you had or what luxury items you owned. Instead, it was about having a rich inner life, filled with virtue and wisdom. He believed that this was the path to happiness. But here's the kicker. Seneca wasn't just some philosopher detached from reality. He didn't live a life free from struggles. In fact, his political career was marred by scandal, betrayal, and even the wrath of the emperor he served. He was exiled twice and later forced to commit suicide by Nero. But through it all, Seneca remained steadfast in his Stoic beliefs. He never abandoned his philosophy, even when his wealth and power were stripped away. This is what makes Seneca's teachings so powerful. They weren't abstract ideas for philosophers in ivory towers. They were practical, lived-out principles that helped him navigate a chaotic and unpredictable world. One of Seneca's most famous works is his collection of letters to his friend Lucilius. In these letters, Seneca offers advice on how to live a life of virtue. He tells Lucilius, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This is a crucial Stoic idea. Our minds are powerful, and often we create problems for ourselves that don't even exist. We get caught up in worry, anxiety, and fear over things that may never happen. Stoicism teaches us to manage our thoughts, to prevent them from spiraling into irrational fears and worries. Seneca's teachings on the power of the mind are timeless. Today, we live in a world filled with constant distractions, social media, endless notifications, and a culture that encourages us to compare ourselves to others. We often feel as though we're not enough, as though we need more to be happy. Seneca would say that this is a trap. he would urge you to focus on what really matters: wisdom, virtue, and cultivating an inner peace that doesn't depend on external factors. So, how can we apply Seneca's teachings in our daily lives? Well, next time you're overwhelmed by the pursuit of more stuff, more recognition, more success, take a step back and ask yourself, what is enough? Do you need more, or can you be content with what you have? The Stoic mindset encourages us to focus on what's truly important and not get distracted by the endless cycle of material desire. In one of his letters, Seneca even talked about the importance of practicing death. Sounds a little morbid, right? But stick with me. Seneca argued that by contemplating our mortality, we can learn to live more fully. It's not about fearing death. It's about recognizing that our time is limited. The awareness of our finite existence should encourage us to focus on what truly matters, living virtuously and making the most of every moment. For example, how many times have you gotten caught up in trivial worries? How you look, how much money you have, or whether people like you? Seneca would urge you to remember that life is fleeting, and the things you stress about today may not matter tomorrow. So, rather than wasting time chasing after fleeting pleasures, focus on what you can control: your thoughts, your actions, and your responses to life's challenges. Now, let's reflect on the idea of practicing death for a moment. Stoicism isn't about being gloomy or obsessed with the end of life. It's about living with intention. When you acknowledge that your time is limited, you become more conscious of how you spend it. You start to realize that the things you worry about, whether they're small annoyances or big existential questions, don't matter nearly as much as you think. Seneca's teachings encourage you to take a step back and ask yourself, am I living in a way that aligns with my values? Am I focusing on what truly brings peace and meaning to my life? As we continue to explore Seneca's teachings, keep this in mind. His life was filled with personal loss, betrayal, and hardship. Yet, he never wavered from his Stoic principles. His writings continue to serve as a guide for anyone who seeks peace in a turbulent world. Seneca didn't need to be wealthy or powerful to live a meaningful life. He lived by the Stoic belief that true happiness comes from within, from our ability to control our thoughts and responses. Seneca's wisdom is more relevant than ever today, in a world that constantly tempts us to chase after external success. He reminds us that the pursuit of virtue and wisdom is the true path to happiness. By practicing Stoicism, we can all learn to live with greater peace, regardless of our external circumstances. Now that we've explored the core teachings of Seneca and his practical Stoic advice, let's turn our attention to another pivotal figure in Stoicism: Marcus Aurelius. You might already be familiar with his name. He was the Roman emperor, the man who ruled the Roman Empire during some of its most challenging times. Yet, despite his power and status, Marcus Aurelius is perhaps best known today for his writings on Stoicism, which he crafted during times of war, plague, and personal hardship. Marcus Aurelius didn't have a life of leisure. Being emperor meant dealing with constant political intrigue, military battles, and the immense responsibility of governing a vast empire. In fact, Marcus spent much of his reign in the front lines, fighting off barbarian invasions and dealing with uprisings within his own territories. Despite all of this, he wrote his personal reflections, what we now know as meditations. These reflections were not intended for publication. They were a personal diary where Marcus could remind himself of the Stoic principles he tried to live by. So, how does a man who has to deal with the complexities of ruling an empire, fighting wars, and dealing with personal loss, manage to stay calm and composed? The answer lies in his unwavering commitment to the Stoic mindset. For Marcus, Stoicism wasn't just a philosophy. It was a tool for maintaining clarity and calm in the midst of chaos. One of the key themes in Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is the idea of accepting the impermanence of life. He constantly reminds himself that everything in life is temporary, the good, the bad, and everything in between. Nothing lasts forever, so why worry about things that are out of your control? This lesson is deeply Stoic. By recognizing that everything is fleeting, we can free ourselves from the anxiety of wanting to control everything around us. Imagine walking through life with the understanding that every moment, every joy, every challenge is just part of a larger flow, and none of it is permanent. This, according to Marcus, is the secret to living a peaceful life. In Meditations, Marcus often speaks to himself, almost as if he's reminding himself not to get swept away by the noise of the world. He would write things like, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say and think. This idea isn't meant to be depressing. It's a reminder to live fully in the present, to make every moment count, and to let go of the attachment to things that don't truly matter in the grand scheme of life. It's a simple but powerful concept. So often we get caught up in the past or the future. We think about past mistakes or imagine worst-case scenarios about the future. But Marcus Aurelius encouraged his readers to stay focused on the present. What can you control right now? How can you make your actions today aligned with your values and virtues? That's where the true power lies. Another of Marcus's key lessons revolves around community, the idea that we are all part of something bigger than ourselves. This is one of the central teachings of Stoicism. Marcus believed that we are all connected by our shared humanity, and that living a virtuous life means working for the greater good, not just for personal gain. As emperor, Marcus had the power to make decisions that would impact millions of people. But he constantly reminded himself to approach his leadership with humility and a sense of responsibility. He viewed his position as a way to serve others, rather than a tool for personal glory. One of the things that stands out about Marcus is his emphasis on the importance of perspective. In times of crisis, he would often remind himself to reframe the situation. If something difficult happened, say a military defeat or a personal loss, he would ask himself, what is the opportunity here? How can I grow from this? Stoicism teaches us to look at challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for growth and self-improvement. The world isn't against us. It's simply providing us with chances to practice patience, resilience, and wisdom. And here's the beauty of Marcus's Stoicism. It wasn't about ignoring the tough stuff. It was about accepting it and using it as a chance to become a better person. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. People let us down. Our careers hit bumps, and health issues arise. But instead of getting bogged down by frustration and resentment, Marcus would approach these situations with the mindset of, this is an opportunity for me to grow stronger. This is my chance to live by my values and not be swayed by external events. But let's take a step back. It's easy to imagine Marcus Aurelius as some stoic, unfeeling emperor sitting on his throne in perfect composure. But he wasn't a robot. He was human, just like you and me, and he struggled with the same emotions. He was just as prone to frustration, doubt, and fear. But what set him apart was his commitment to practicing Stoicism every day. He didn't just rely on his status or power to give him peace. Instead, he sought peace from within, by living according to virtue and reminding himself daily that he had control over his responses. Nothing more, nothing less. Marcus's meditations are filled with these kinds of reflections. They're personal, raw, and often quite relatable. You can imagine him sitting by candlelight in his tent or in his palace, writing these words as a way to steady his mind. And while his struggles were on a larger scale than ours, he wasn't dealing with bad hair days or a late pizza delivery. His approach to life is just as applicable today as it was in ancient Rome. You don't have to be an emperor or a philosopher to live by Marcus's principles. Anyone can practice Stoicism. When you wake up in the morning, you can remind yourself, "Today I will focus on what I can control. I will respond to challenges with grace and patience. I will live with integrity and serve those around me." These are the values Marcus practiced, and they can guide us too, whether we're running a company, raising a family, or simply trying to get through the day with a little peace of mind. So, as you go about your day, think of Marcus Aurelius. Think of his resilience in the face of adversity. Think of his commitment to virtue and wisdom. When you face challenges, whether big or small, ask yourself, what can I control here? How can I respond in a way that stays true to my values? That's where the real power of Stoicism lies. Not in the absence of hardship, but in the presence of a strong, calm, and virtuous mind. Now that we've seen how Marcus Aurelius applied Stoicism to lead a life of virtue, let's explore one of the core teachings that Stoicism is perhaps best known for: the dichotomy of control. This concept is at the heart of Stoic philosophy and holds the key to understanding how to find peace and contentment in a chaotic world. Imagine this. You're sitting in your living room, sipping your favorite drink, and everything feels calm. But then, out of nowhere, you get an email. It's from your boss. The subject line? Immediate action required. Your stomach drops as you open the email and your mind races. You start imagining the worst-case scenario. You might be fired. Your career might be over. Suddenly, your peaceful moment is gone, and your mind is consumed by fear and anxiety. But here's where Stoicism offers a powerful shift in perspective. The Stoics would say that your anxiety is rooted in the fact that you're focusing on something outside of your control. The situation with your boss, the email itself, may be troubling, but it's not something you can control. What you can control, however, is how you respond to it. You can choose to panic, or you can choose to remain calm, assess the situation rationally, and take appropriate action without being ruled by fear. This is the core of the dichotomy of control. There are things we can change, and things we can't. The secret to peace lies in knowing the difference. Let's break this down. The dichotomy of control is the idea that some things are in our control, and some things aren't. The things that we can control are our own actions, thoughts, and reactions. The things that we cannot control are the actions of others, external events, and even our physical environment. Once we understand this, we realize that much of our stress and frustration comes from trying to control things that are beyond our power. For example, when you're stuck in traffic, you can't change the fact that the road is congested. You can't magically make the cars move faster or control the other drivers. But what you can control is your reaction to the situation. You can choose to let the frustration build up, or you can use that time to listen to an audiobook, practice deep breathing, or simply enjoy the quiet. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's within our power, letting go of the urge to control everything around us. This is such a crucial lesson in today's world. We live in a time when it's easy to feel overwhelmed, whether it's because of work deadlines, family obligations, or the constant barrage of news. The world often feels chaotic, and the temptation is to try and control everything. But Stoicism reminds us that true freedom comes from accepting what is beyond our control and focusing on what we can influence, our own thoughts, actions, and emotions. This shift in mindset can bring about a sense of calm and clarity, even in the most stressful situations. The Stoics didn't just sit around and let life happen to them. They weren't passive in the face of challenges. Instead, they actively chose how to respond. This is one of the most empowering aspects of Stoic philosophy, the idea that we are not helpless in the face of adversity. We can always choose our response, and in doing so, we regain control over our own minds. So, how can we apply the dichotomy of control to our own lives? Let's take a look at a few examples. Maybe you're dealing with a difficult colleague at work, someone whose actions are frustrating and challenging. You can't control their behavior, but you can control how you interact with them. You can choose to remain calm, professional, and respectful, even if they don't. By focusing on your own actions, you free yourself from the stress of trying to change them. Or maybe you're facing a health challenge. You can't control the diagnosis, but you can control your response. You can choose to take care of yourself, seek treatment, and focus on what's within your power to improve your situation. By focusing on what you can do, you empower yourself to take action and create positive change, even in a difficult situation. This is where the Stoic principle of virtue comes into play. Stoicism teaches that the highest good is living a virtuous life. Virtue, in the Stoic sense, means living with wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation. These are qualities that we can cultivate, no matter the external circumstances. If we focus on developing these virtues, we will find that we are more resilient in the face of life's challenges. We won't be swayed by the ups and downs of life because we will have rooted ourselves in the understanding that our virtue is within our control. But what about the things we can't control? The Stoics recognized that life is unpredictable. No matter how much we plan, things can and will go wrong. People will disappoint us, things will break, and we will face setbacks. But the Stoic response is to accept this as part of life. Rather than fighting against the inevitable, the Stoic seeks to embrace it with grace and resilience. This doesn't mean we give up or stop trying. It means we learn to navigate the unpredictable terrain of life with equanimity. Epictetus famously said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." This statement encapsulates the dichotomy of control. It's a reminder that while we can't control the weather or the actions of others, we can always control how we respond. And in that choice, we find our freedom. Let's pause for a moment and think about how this applies to your life. When was the last time you felt overwhelmed or stressed out by something beyond your control? How did you respond? Would you have handled it differently if you'd applied the dichotomy of control? By shifting your focus to what you can control, you free yourself from the burden of trying to manage everything that happens around you. You'll find that by accepting the things you cannot change, you are better equipped to face the challenges that come your way with peace and clarity. The Stoic idea of the dichotomy of control is more than just a philosophical concept. It's a powerful tool for living a calm, purposeful life. By recognizing the difference between what you can and cannot control, you can focus your energy on the things that truly matter. and in doing so, you'll find greater peace, no matter what life throws your way. As we continue our exploration of Stoic thought, let's dig deeper into one of the most profound and often overlooked elements of the philosophy: virtue as the only good. For the Stoics, virtue was not a mere quality of being good, it was the highest pursuit of human life. It wasn't something you achieved on special occasions, but something you practiced consistently. In fact, Stoics believed that living virtuously was the sole path to happiness and fulfillment. Let's break that down. In modern life, happiness is often defined by external factors. We think of happiness as something we achieve by accumulating wealth, gaining status, or getting what we want. But for the Stoics, this was all an illusion. According to them, the only true good is virtue, living according to wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. Everything else, health, wealth, pleasure, is outside our control and can be taken away at any moment. Virtue, however, is eternal and remains with us as long as we choose it. Marcus Aurelius, who practiced what he preached, frequently reminded himself that the pursuit of virtue was his true purpose. He often wrote in his meditations about how little the external circumstances of his life mattered. Whether he was dealing with personal loss, the pressures of empire, or the challenges of aging, Marcus always returned to the idea that living virtuously was the only thing that could bring true peace. His reflections give us a clear reminder. When everything else falls apart, our character and our virtue are what remain. But what does it mean to live virtuously? It means acting with wisdom, understanding the world and making decisions that align with what is true and right. It means acting with justice, doing what is fair and good, even when it's difficult. It means acting with courage, facing challenges, fear, and adversity without being swayed by irrational emotions. And it means acting with moderation, avoiding excess and indulgence, and keeping balance in our lives. For the Stoics, living virtuously isn't an abstract idea. It's something you do. Virtue isn't about thinking, I should be good, but about living it every day in every action and thought. The Stoic practice of virtue can be challenging, especially when life throws us curveballs, but this is where the true strength of the philosophy lies. When we focus on developing our virtues, we can face any external circumstance with equanimity, because we are grounded in what really matters: our character. Think about this for a moment. When you face a difficult situation, do you focus on the problem itself, or do you focus on how you can respond in a virtuous way? Let's say you get into an argument with a close friend or family member. The natural reaction might be to defend yourself, to feel anger or frustration, and to try to win the argument. But the Stoic response would be different. Instead of reacting impulsively, a Stoic would pause and ask themselves, what is the virtuous response here? It could mean showing wisdom by listening calmly, demonstrating courage by standing firm in your beliefs without aggression, or showing justice by seeking fairness and reconciliation. By practicing these virtues, you not only improve the situation but also grow stronger in your character. Living virtuously isn't easy. It requires constant self-awareness and self-discipline. This is why the Stoics engaged in daily practices to remind themselves of their values. They wrote in journals, reflected on their thoughts, and meditated on their actions. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, would remind himself in his meditations that he must face each day with gratitude and virtue, no matter the external challenges he faced. This daily commitment to virtue helped him stay grounded in the face of constant turmoil. It's a reminder that cultivating virtue isn't a one-time act. It's a lifelong journey of refining ourselves through consistent effort. Let's take a closer look at how virtue can change our lives today. In the hustle and bustle of modern life, it's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of material success. We chase after promotions, big houses, expensive gadgets, or social status, thinking these things will bring us happiness. But, as the Stoics would say, these external pursuits are fleeting. They come and go. The real question is, how can we cultivate lasting peace, contentment, and happiness? For the Stoics, the answer lies in virtue. Think about your daily actions. Are they guided by wisdom, courage, justice, and moderation? Or are you getting caught up in the superficial distractions of life? Virtue, according to Stoicism, isn't about achieving perfection, but about striving every day to be better than you were the day before. It's about aligning your actions with your values, no matter what life throws at you. It's not about being perfect. It's about being consistent in your effort to live in accordance with your principles. And here's where Stoicism gets really interesting. The Stoics didn't believe that virtue meant denying pleasure or emotion. Instead, they believed that true pleasure comes from living virtuously. When we act with wisdom, courage, and justice, we naturally align ourselves with a deeper sense of fulfillment. The pleasures of material goods or fleeting achievements become less significant because we've found something more lasting, a sense of inner peace and self-respect. It's tempting, of course, to get distracted by external desires. In today's world, we're constantly bombarded by messages telling us that happiness comes from more money, more stuff, more likes on social media. But the Stoics remind us that these things don't bring lasting happiness. Instead, we find true happiness by aligning ourselves with virtue. By focusing on becoming better versions of ourselves each day, we create a lasting sense of peace that doesn't depend on the whims of the external world. As you reflect on the idea of virtue, ask yourself, what virtues do you want to develop in your life? Is it wisdom, justice, courage, or moderation? Whatever it is, remember that living virtuously is not a goal you achieve once and forget about. It's an ongoing practice, a daily commitment to becoming the best version of yourself, no matter the circumstances around you. The path to peace is not through external rewards, but through developing internal virtue. By practicing Stoicism, you begin to build a life that is resilient, steady, and grounded in what truly matters. You begin to focus less on what you can't control and more on what you can: your thoughts, your actions, and your virtue. As we continue our exploration of Stoic philosophy, let's take a closer look at another practice that the Stoics emphasized deeply: meditation and reflection. If you've ever heard of the daily Stoic journaling practice, or perhaps wondered how these ancient philosophers stayed grounded in their principles, you might be surprised to learn that much of it came down to dedicated time for self-reflection. This wasn't about random pondering. It was a structured practice aimed at building self-awareness, emotional resilience, and inner peace. The practice of reflection is central to Stoicism, and for good reason. The Stoics believed that if we don't take time to examine our lives, we're essentially living on autopilot, allowing external events to control our emotions and responses. Imagine that you're going through your day without ever checking in with yourself, without taking a moment to step back, reflect, and reassess how you're reacting to life's challenges. It's easy to let frustration, stress, or anxiety take over in those moments. But when you pause to reflect, you gain control. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor we've mentioned before, is perhaps the best-known Stoic to have embraced daily reflection. In his meditations, he would often write down his thoughts, struggles, and reminders to himself, encouraging himself to stay aligned with Stoic virtues. But Marcus didn't just reflect when things were going wrong. He made it a part of his daily routine. Every day he would check in with himself, reminding himself of his purpose, his values, and his commitment to virtue. The act of journaling, writing down your thoughts, has profound effects. Think about it. In today's world, we're bombarded by distractions. Our attention is constantly pulled in 1,000 different directions: social media, work emails, and endless notifications. When was the last time you took just 5 minutes to sit in silence and reflect on your day, on your actions, and on your thoughts? For the Stoics, this was an essential part of life. It wasn't about seeking perfection or beating yourself up over mistakes. It was about noticing your behavior and thoughts without judgment, and deciding how to align them with your values. Epictetus, too, stressed the importance of reflection in daily life. In his teachings, he emphasized how powerful it is to reflect on your thoughts before acting. He would ask his students to question their immediate reactions. Are these responses rational? Are they in line with Stoic virtues? By doing so, the Stoics created a space between stimulus and response, allowing them to choose the best course of action rather than react impulsively. Here's the challenge for us. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to get swept up in the chaos of our lives. We don't take time to pause, reflect, and realign ourselves. It's so much easier to get caught up in stress, anger, and frustration, especially when things go wrong. But reflection is a powerful tool for regaining control. When you take the time to ask yourself questions like, how did I respond to that situation? Was it the best way to respond? Or, what can I learn from this experience? You give yourself the chance to grow, to make better choices, and to live more intentionally. Think about it this way. You wake up in the morning and you're already thinking about your to-do list, the emails that need responding to, and the tasks ahead. By the time you get to the office, your mind is already racing, jumping from one thing to the next. But what if, before you dive into your busy day, you take just 5 minutes to sit quietly and reflect on your intentions? What do you want to accomplish today? How do you want to respond to challenges? What virtues do you want to practice? In those moments of pause, you set the tone for your day. You regain control of your mind and your actions, rather than allowing external events to take over. Seneca also believed in the power of daily reflection. In his letters to Lucilius, he would often advise him to examine his life at the end of the day, to see if he had lived in alignment with his Stoic values. This wasn't meant to be a harsh judgment of his actions, but an opportunity for growth. Through this process of self-examination, Seneca believed we could cultivate wisdom and a deeper understanding of ourselves. This practice helps us step outside of our habitual ways of thinking and behavior, which can often be reactive or driven by external pressures. When we reflect, we give ourselves the chance to respond thoughtfully, not impulsively. For the Stoics, the goal of reflection wasn't to feel guilty or to focus on what went wrong. It was to learn and grow. It was to become more aware of our thoughts and actions, and to better align them with our principles. When you reflect on your day, you might ask yourself, did I act in a way that aligns with my values? What can I improve tomorrow? This kind of reflective thinking leads to gradual self-improvement, day by day, action by action. Now, let's talk about how reflection plays a role in managing emotions. One of the key principles of Stoicism is the idea of apatheia, a state of emotional clarity, free from irrational impulses and disturbances. This doesn't mean that Stoics don't feel emotions. It means that they don't let those emotions control them. Emotions are natural and human, but Stoicism teaches us to understand them, not to suppress them. By reflecting on our emotions and understanding where they come from, we gain the ability to respond to them in a rational, controlled manner. Think about how much easier it is to handle a stressful situation when you've had the chance to reflect and reset your mindset. You're in a meeting and someone criticizes your work. Your first impulse might be to defend yourself, to react with frustration or anger. But if you've practiced reflection, you might take a deep breath, pause, and choose to respond calmly and rationally. Reflection gives you that space to act deliberately rather than impulsively. It allows you to choose your response based on your values, rather than reacting out of fear, anger, or defensiveness. In a world full of distractions, reflection gives us the space to slow down, breathe, and reconnect with what truly matters. It helps us navigate life's challenges with greater wisdom and clarity. And, as the Stoics would say, by practicing this daily, we begin to live in harmony with our values, which ultimately leads to a more peaceful, fulfilling life. So, if you want to practice reflection, start small. At the end of each day, take a few minutes to sit in silence and reflect on your actions, your thoughts, and your emotions. What went well? What could you improve? By incorporating this practice into your routine, you'll begin to notice changes in how you respond to challenges and how you live each day. Stoicism isn't about perfection. It's about consistent growth, and reflection is a key tool on that journey. Now that we've explored the core principles of Stoicism, including the dichotomy of control, virtue, and daily reflection, let's delve into another key concept of Stoic thought: the role of nature in Stoic philosophy. For the Stoics, understanding and aligning with nature was at the very heart of living a good life. But what do the Stoics mean by nature, and how does it influence the way we live today? To the Stoics, nature wasn't just about the natural world: trees, rivers, animals, and seasons, though that was certainly a part of it. Nature, in the Stoic sense, refers to the rational order that governs the universe. The Stoics believed that the universe was an ordered system, a cosmic web of interconnections governed by reason. And because humans are part of that universe, the Stoics argued that it's our job to live in harmony with this rational order. Living according to nature, for the Stoics, meant living in alignment with reason, virtue, and the natural flow of the world. Think about it. How often do we fight against the natural flow of life? We want things to happen on our timeline. We push against the natural rhythms of work, relationships, and even our own health. We might resist challenges, avoid discomfort, or obsess over things we can't control. But the Stoics remind us that life is naturally unpredictable, and resisting its flow only causes unnecessary suffering. To live in harmony with nature, then, is to accept life as it comes and respond with reason and virtue. Imagine you're standing at the edge of a river. The current is strong and you can't stop it. If you try to fight the current, you'll only exhaust yourself and get nowhere. But if you let the current carry you, using it to navigate, you'll move forward with ease. This is the Stoic approach to life. Rather than resisting what's outside our control, we align ourselves with the natural flow of the world. We accept that we can't change certain things, like the weather, the actions of others, or the passage of time. And instead, we focus on how we respond to them. So, how does this idea apply to us in the modern world? We live in a time when we're constantly bombarded by distractions, pressures, and demands. Our schedules are packed, our expectations are high, and we often feel as though we're running against the clock. In many ways, we're fighting the natural flow of life, trying to control things that are beyond our grasp. The Stoics would urge us to take a step back, to align ourselves with the rhythm of life, and to remember that we can't force things to happen according to our own desires. This doesn't mean we should be passive or resigned to the difficulties of life. Quite the opposite. The Stoics believed that living in accordance with nature meant using our rational faculties to make thoughtful decisions, to live virtuously, and to respond to life's challenges with wisdom and grace. But it also meant recognizing when it's time to stop fighting against the tide, and instead move with it. Take a moment and think about how often you find yourself resisting what's happening in your life. Perhaps you're dealing with a difficult work situation, a relationship problem, or personal health issues. Are you trying to force things to go a certain way, or are you accepting the natural course of events and responding with calm and reason? The Stoic practice of aligning with nature teaches us that peace doesn't come from forcing life to be what we want it to be, but from accepting it as it is and making the most of what we have. This concept of aligning with nature also ties into the Stoic view of the rational soul. The Stoics believed that humans are endowed with reason, which is the part of us that connects us to the rational order of the universe. By using our reason, we align ourselves with the natural order, and in doing so, we live virtuously. Wisdom, according to the Stoics, is the ability to see things as they are, to understand the natural flow of life, and to respond in the most rational, virtuous way possible. Let's think about this in terms of personal growth. In modern life, we often focus on external achievements, getting that promotion, buying that house, or acquiring more material possessions. But the Stoics would argue that true growth comes from aligning with nature, from cultivating inner virtues like wisdom, justice, and courage. When we focus on developing these inner qualities, we are living in harmony with the rational order of the world, and in doing so, we find fulfillment. There's a beautiful Stoic exercise that can help us understand and align with nature. The view from above. This exercise involves imagining yourself looking down on the world from a great height, seeing the vastness of the earth, the endless cycles of nature, and the passage of time. In this exercise, you are reminded that you are a small part of something much larger, an interconnected, ever-changing world. This perspective helps us put our problems in context and realize that, in the grand scheme of things, many of our struggles are temporary. This exercise encourages us to align ourselves with the greater flow of nature, recognizing our place in the world and accepting what we can't control. But what about the world around us? Our environment, our relationships, and the things that influence our daily lives. The Stoics believed that everything in nature has a purpose, and so do we. Each of us has a role to play, and by living virtuously, we fulfill that role. The Stoic understanding of nature encourages us to embrace our role, however small it may seem, and to act in accordance with the greater good. Living in accordance with nature also means recognizing our interconnectedness with others. The Stoics believed that we are all part of a larger community, and that living virtuously means contributing to the well-being of that community. In this sense, Stoicism teaches us not only to live for ourselves, but to live in a way that benefits others. When we act justly, with wisdom and compassion, we contribute to the natural order of the world. So, how can we apply this to our own lives? First, we can start by observing the natural flow of things, rather than resisting it. When we encounter challenges, we can reflect on how we might respond in a way that aligns with the greater order of nature. Second, we can focus on developing the inner virtues that will help us live in harmony with the world around us. Finally, we can embrace our role in the larger community, acting with justice and wisdom to contribute to the greater good. In a world that often feels chaotic and out of control, the Stoics remind us that peace comes from accepting what is and responding with virtue. By aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life, we free ourselves from the constant struggle and find true contentment. Now that we've explored the importance of aligning ourselves with nature, let's shift gears a little bit and dive into one of the Stoic views that might be a bit difficult to grasp at first: death and mortality. This might sound a bit morbid at first, but stick with me. The Stoics didn't view death as something to be feared. In fact, they saw it as an integral part of life, a natural, inevitable process that we should accept with grace and wisdom. It's a topic that can really reshape the way we live our everyday lives. The Stoics taught that by contemplating death, we could live more fully and with greater purpose. This may sound a little counterintuitive, but the idea is simple. When we recognize the impermanence of life, we start to value what really matters. Death, in a sense, becomes a teacher, reminding us that life is fleeting, that time is precious, and that we shouldn't waste it chasing things that don't bring true fulfillment. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, frequently reflects on the brevity of life. He reminds himself that death is a part of nature, and he doesn't shy away from thinking about it. In fact, he embraces the reality of his mortality. One of his most famous quotes is, "You could leave life right now." Let that determine what you do and say, and think Marcus recognized that the knowledge of death, his own and the inevitable passing of all things, wasn't something to fear. Rather, it was a reminder to live with intention and purpose. Death wasn't an enemy. It was a natural process to be accepted. Now, before you panic and think that I'm suggesting we all start obsessing over death, that's not the case. The Stoic approach to death isn't about dwelling on it constantly or feeling anxious about it. It's about accepting it as a natural part of life, so that we can focus on living well. For the Stoics, it was about accepting the reality of death so that we could be more present and intentional with our time. If you truly understand that you don't know when your time will come, whether tomorrow or in 50 years, you start to make better choices with the time you have. Take a moment and think about how much time you spend worrying about things that don't really matter in the grand scheme of life. We often waste so much energy on trivial matters. Who said what? Small annoyances, things we can't control. But when you reflect on the certainty of death, you're forced to confront what's really important. You start asking yourself, am I living the life I want to live? Am I pursuing things that truly matter? For the Stoics, the goal wasn't to live in fear of death, but to live in spite of it. By acknowledging the brevity of life, we become more focused, more grounded, and more grateful for the time we do have. Seneca, in his writings, also frequently meditated on death. In his essay on the shortness of life, he discusses how we waste so much of our time, living as if we have an endless supply of it. He points out that we often spend years in the pursuit of wealth, fame, or other fleeting pleasures, only to find that they don't bring lasting happiness. In contrast, He encourages us to spend our time on what truly matters, on developing wisdom, virtue, and meaningful relationships. The time we spend on these things is never wasted, because they align with the deeper, more enduring values that lead to a fulfilled life. So, how does this all tie into the Stoic practice of living with purpose? The key takeaway here is this. By acknowledging the reality of death, we become more intentional about how we live. It's easy to fall into the trap of living in autopilot, going through the motions of work, errands, and social obligations. But when you consider the limited nature of your time, everything changes. You begin to prioritize what truly brings meaning and value to your life. You focus less on the superficial and more on the things that will bring lasting fulfillment, such as cultivating good relationships, living virtuously, and making an impact on others. Another crucial point is that death, according to the Stoics, isn't something we should fear. It's not a punishment or a cruel twist of fate, it's part of the natural order. Everything in life is born, grows, and eventually dies. This is the cycle of nature, and death is a natural part of it. The Stoics argue that fearing death is like fearing any other natural process, like fearing the changing seasons or the setting of the sun. Death is inevitable, and while we can't control when it will come, we can control how we meet it. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus puts it succinctly. It's not death that we should fear, but never having lived. In other words, the fear of death is often a distraction from the deeper fear we should have, that we might go through life without truly living it, without taking risks, without pursuing our values, and without connecting with others in meaningful ways. Now, let's take this idea and bring it into our modern lives. How often do we avoid doing things because we're afraid of failure, rejection, or ultimately, death? Not necessarily physical death, but the death of our plans, dreams, or comfort zones. The Stoics would urge us to look at these fears through the lens of mortality. If death could come at any time, what's really worth being afraid of? Is this small setback or challenge really worth losing sleep over? Understanding the reality of our mortality shifts our perspective on what's truly worth fearing. This Stoic practice of contemplating death also has another benefit. It helps us live more fully. When you remember that time is limited, you start to live with urgency. Not urgency driven by stress or anxiety, but a healthy, focused urgency that encourages you to make the most of each day. It helps you prioritize the things that truly matter, and it encourages you to stop wasting time on things that don't align with your values. So, while thinking about death might seem like a dark or uncomfortable topic, it's actually a powerful tool for living a more vibrant, purposeful life. When we embrace the reality of our own mortality, we free ourselves from unnecessary worries and distractions, and we can focus on living with clarity, wisdom, and integrity. In this way, death becomes a reminder to live well, not to fear the end, but to make the most of the time we have. Having explored the Stoic view of death and the importance of reflecting on mortality to live more fully, let's now turn our attention to a very practical aspect of Stoic philosophy: how to cultivate resilience in the face of adversity. Life is unpredictable, and adversity is inevitable. From personal loss to career setbacks, we all face difficulties that test our mental and emotional strength. But the Stoics had a powerful response to adversity, one that has been a source of inspiration for centuries. They didn't just tolerate hardship, they actively embraced it as an opportunity to grow stronger and more virtuous. One of the most important Stoic ideas here is the notion of amor fati, the love of fate. This concept teaches us that rather than resisting or resenting the challenges life throws at us, we should learn to love them. Imagine, for a moment, approaching every setback or failure with gratitude, seeing it as an opportunity for growth rather than something to be avoided. This doesn't mean we should seek out suffering for the sake of it, but rather that we should embrace the inevitable difficulties of life as necessary steps in our personal development. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflected on the fact that obstacles and challenges are a natural part of life. He would remind himself that the universe is designed to function in a rational and orderly way, and everything that happens is part of that order. Even when faced with war, illness, or personal struggles, Marcus saw these events as part of his journey, an opportunity to practice the virtues of wisdom, courage, and self-control. Think about this for a moment. How often do we experience frustration when things don't go according to plan? We face rejection, we hit roadblocks, or we encounter unexpected challenges. The Stoic response is to embrace these moments, seeing them not as disruptions, but as opportunities to practice resilience. When you face difficulty, ask yourself, how can I respond to this in a way that aligns with my values? How can I grow from this experience? For example, imagine you've just lost a job or a project you've been working on for months has fallen apart. Your first impulse might be to feel angry or defeated, to mourn what you've lost. And that's natural. It's okay to feel those emotions. But instead of staying stuck in frustration, the Stoic would encourage you to reflect. What can I learn from this? Maybe this setback gives you the chance to reassess your goals, to develop new skills, or to pivot in a way you hadn't considered before. Instead of viewing adversity as something negative, you begin to see it as a catalyst for growth. Epictetus, too, speaks about the role of adversity in our lives. He believed that hardship is a powerful tool for developing resilience. In his famous quote, "Difficulties are what teach us how to be strong," he emphasized that life's struggles aren't to be avoided, but embraced as necessary parts of our development. For Epictetus, it was all about taking control of how we respond to the things that happen to us. You can't control the actions of others, the bad weather, or the unexpected events that disrupt your life. But you can control how you respond. Now, this idea of embracing adversity doesn't mean that we ignore our feelings or suppress our natural reactions. Stoicism is not about being emotionless or detached from the world. On the contrary, it's about acknowledging our feelings, but then making the choice to respond in a way that aligns with our deeper values. For example, if you're feeling angry after an argument, Stoicism teaches you to acknowledge that anger, reflect on its cause, and then choose how to respond in a way that's calm, thoughtful, and aligned with your virtue. One of the most powerful Stoic exercises for building resilience is the practice of negative visualization. This practice involves imagining the worst-case scenario, losing your job, your health, or a loved one, and preparing yourself emotionally for it. This exercise isn't meant to make you anxious or paranoid. Rather, it's designed to help you build resilience by confronting the possibility of loss and accepting that it's part of life. By imagining these difficult scenarios, you can cultivate gratitude for what you have in the present moment and prepare yourself mentally for whatever may come. When you practice negative visualization, you begin to detach from the fear of loss and focus on what you can control, your thoughts, and your response. Let's bring this back to real life. Think about a moment when you've faced a big challenge. Maybe it's something at work, a relationship difficulty, or a personal struggle. What would happen if, instead of resisting the challenge, you saw it as an opportunity to build resilience? What if you viewed each difficulty not as something to be avoided, but as a chance to practice patience, courage, and wisdom? The Stoics believed that, over time, this mindset shift can transform the way you experience the world. Rather than fearing adversity, you start to see it as a natural, valuable part of your journey. It becomes a stepping stone, not an obstacle. The Stoics didn't seek to live a life free from struggle. They knew that life would always be filled with challenges, both big and small. But they believed that by practicing resilience, by embracing hardship as part of their development, they could navigate life's storms with a sense of calm and inner strength. And that's the essence of Stoic resilience. Not avoiding pain, but learning to endure it gracefully and with purpose. When you practice resilience, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as an active participant in your own life. You take control of your response, and in doing so, you take control of your peace. Resilience isn't about never feeling down or being unaffected by life's difficulties. It's about knowing that no matter what happens, you have the strength to rise, to learn, and to grow. So, the next time you face adversity, whether it's a difficult conversation, a professional setback, or a personal loss, remember that the Stoics would encourage you to ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I respond with resilience and virtue? By embracing adversity as an opportunity for growth, you become more equipped to navigate life with strength and wisdom. Now that we've explored how to cultivate resilience in the face of adversity, let's look at a deeply relevant Stoic concept: the importance of self-control. In a world that constantly tempts us to give in to our desires, distractions, and impulses, mastering self-control is one of the most empowering aspects of Stoic philosophy. The Stoics believed that true freedom and peace come not from external circumstances, but from our ability to control our internal world, the thoughts, desires, and emotions that drive our actions. At the heart of self-control is the Stoic belief that we are responsible for our own happiness. No one else can determine how we feel or how we respond to situations. It's not the world that dictates our emotions. It's our own judgments about the world. This idea can be incredibly freeing. When you realize that your happiness is within your control, you stop giving away your peace to other people or to external events. You take back the reins of your life and start living intentionally. Let's talk about one of the most famous Stoic exercises for cultivating self-control: the practice of voluntary discomfort. The Stoics believed that by choosing to experience discomfort on our own terms, we could strengthen our ability to endure hardship. This exercise wasn't about seeking out suffering for the sake of it, but about developing the mental toughness to handle the challenges life throws our way. By intentionally making ourselves uncomfortable in small ways, we train ourselves to handle greater challenges with calm and composure. For example, imagine you're used to indulging in certain comforts. Maybe you eat sweets regularly, or you're always scrolling through your phone for entertainment. The Stoics would encourage you to take a break from those comforts, not because they're inherently bad, but to remind yourself that you don't need them to be happy. You could practice this by skipping a treat or putting your phone down for an hour to focus on something more meaningful. By voluntarily choosing discomfort, you reinforce your ability to exercise self-control, and in doing so, you become less dependent on external sources of pleasure. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often wrote about the importance of controlling our desires. He reminded himself that the pursuit of pleasure could distract us from our true purpose in life. It wasn't that pleasure was bad, it was that it should never take precedence over virtue and wisdom. By practicing self-control, we stay focused on what truly matters. Marcus believed that indulging in fleeting pleasures or following our base impulses could cloud our judgment and pull us away from our higher goals. But self-control isn't just about avoiding indulgence, it's also about cultivating the right desires. The Stoics didn't believe in suppressing all desires. Instead, they taught that we should focus on developing the desires that align with virtue. Instead of desiring fame, wealth, or material possessions, we should desire wisdom, justice, and self-discipline. These are the desires that, according to Stoicism, lead to lasting happiness and peace. Epictetus, too, emphasized the importance of self-control in his teachings. He often told his students that they should train themselves to recognize the difference between what they can control and what they cannot. The more we practice self-control, the more we learn to distinguish between our rational desires, the things that bring us true happiness, and our irrational desires, the fleeting wants that often lead to frustration and disappointment. Epictetus believed that our ability to distinguish between these two kinds of desires was a key factor in living a virtuous and peaceful life. In our modern world, self-control is often seen as a virtue that's difficult to cultivate. We're constantly bombarded by distractions, from the allure of social media to the temptation of unhealthy habits. But Stoic self-control isn't about complete abstinence or perfection. It's about making conscious choices and learning to resist the urges that don't serve us. It's about being the master of your own desires, not letting them control you. One of the key ways to strengthen self-control is through mindfulness and reflection. The Stoics didn't just practice self-control in the moment. They reflected on their actions and choices regularly. This was a way for them to stay aligned with their values and ensure that they were making progress toward their goals. When you take time each day to reflect on your actions, whether through journaling or simply taking a quiet moment to review your day, you can gain clarity on where your impulses are taking you and whether those actions are aligned with your deeper purpose. Self-control, as the Stoics saw it, isn't about being rigid or overly harsh on yourself. It's about developing the discipline to choose wisely and to prioritize what truly matters. It's about training your mind to focus on virtue rather than fleeting pleasures, and learning to find satisfaction in the simple things that bring lasting contentment. Take a moment and think about the areas of your life where you feel pulled in different directions. Are there habits or desires that distract you from your true goals? Perhaps you're caught in the cycle of consumerism, always seeking the next thing that promises happiness, only to find that it never truly satisfies. Or maybe you're caught in the grip of negative emotions, reacting impulsively to situations without taking a step back to reflect. The Stoics would encourage you to take a step back and ask yourself, what is truly in my control here? And how can I respond in a way that aligns with my values? The more you practice self-control, the more empowered you become. You start to see that happiness and peace don't come from external sources, but from within, from the ability to control your thoughts, emotions, and actions. When you strengthen your self-control, you stop being a slave to your impulses and start living a life of greater intentionality. You begin to live with purpose, guided by your highest values, rather than being swayed by every external temptation. The Stoics also believed that self-control was a key to living in harmony with others. If we can control our desires, our emotions, and our impulses, we are more likely to act with kindness, patience, and wisdom. Self-control allows us to be more thoughtful in our interactions, less reactive, and more able to serve others. And as we align ourselves with our higher values, we become better members of our communities, contributing to the greater good rather than getting lost in selfish pursuits. In short, self-control is the key to freedom. It's not about denying ourselves pleasure or happiness. It's about recognizing what truly brings us joy and fulfillment, and learning to let go of the distractions that keep us from it. Through self-control, we gain the power to shape our lives according to our values, rather than letting external circumstances shape us. We become the architects of our own peace. As we continue our journey through Stoic philosophy, it's time to explore one of the most pivotal teachings for living a peaceful and virtuous life: the power of perspective. This principle is often woven throughout the Stoic teachings, and for good reason. How we perceive the world shapes the way we interact with it. The Stoics were masters of perspective, reminding us that our thoughts, judgments, and interpretations have a profound impact on our emotional experience. The concept of perspective is central to understanding how Stoicism teaches us to navigate life's challenges. Epictetus, in particular, taught that it's not external events themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. It's not the harsh words of a colleague or the traffic jam on your way to work that causes frustration. It's your perception of those events. If you view them as obstacles or injustices, you will feel angry or upset. But if you reframe them, if you view them as part of the natural order, as opportunities to practice patience or resilience, you can respond with calm and wisdom. This isn't about pretending that life's difficulties don't affect us. The Stoics were clear that we're human, and it's natural to feel emotions like frustration, sadness, and anger. But what Stoicism teaches is that these emotions don't have to control us. Our power lies in how we choose to interpret and respond to the situations we face. By adjusting our perspective, we can transform our experience of life. For example, let's say you're running late for an important meeting and the train is delayed. Your immediate reaction might be frustration, anger at the train, the time wasted, the inconvenience. But a Stoic perspective would encourage you to reframe the situation. Instead of seeing the delay as an enemy, view it as an opportunity. Perhaps it's a chance to practice patience, to calm your mind, or to reflect on your priorities. Maybe you take the extra time to breathe, listen to a podcast, or simply appreciate the fact that you have a moment of stillness before diving into the day. This shift in perspective isn't about ignoring the frustration or pretending the delay didn't happen. It's about choosing how you respond to it, realizing that your reaction is within your control. As Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself in his meditations, everything in life is either an opportunity to act in accordance with virtue or a test of our character. By embracing every challenge as an opportunity for growth, you take the power back from external circumstances and put it in your hands. The Stoics also spoke about the importance of seeing life from a broader perspective, what they called the view from above. This practice encourages us to zoom out and consider our lives in the context of the larger universe. Imagine that you're standing at the edge of a vast city, looking down at the small details of daily life. You see people rushing, cars honking, and the busyness of modern existence. But from this higher vantage point, the everyday struggles and annoyances of life seem insignificant. The traffic jam you're stuck in, the argument you had with a friend, When viewed from a broader perspective, these issues feel smaller. This practice is a reminder that much of what we stress about in the moment is fleeting and ultimately inconsequential in the grand scheme of life. By adopting this view from above, we start to see that our problems are temporary, and they often lose their power over us. We realize that the small annoyances we face daily are part of the natural flow of life, and they don't define our happiness or our well-being. This perspective helps us focus on what truly matters: our values, our relationships, and our purpose. But why is this important? Because how we interpret the world shapes how we feel. When we change our perspective, we change our experience. The Stoics believed that peace of mind comes from aligning our thoughts with reality, rather than getting swept away by our judgments or desires. Life will inevitably bring challenges. People will let us down, things will go wrong, and we'll face setbacks. But it's how we respond to these challenges that defines our happiness. When we adopt a Stoic perspective, we stop allowing external events to dictate our mood, and instead take responsibility for our emotional state. This shift in perspective also plays a crucial role in how we handle the emotions that arise from life's difficulties. The Stoics taught that emotions, while natural, can cloud our judgment and lead to impulsive, reactive behavior. When we view our emotions from a more detached perspective, we can begin to observe them without being overwhelmed by them. We recognize that emotions, like any other sensation, come and go. By not identifying with them too strongly, we free ourselves from their grip. Epictetus taught his students to practice mindful observation of their emotions. When a strong feeling arises, whether it's anger, fear, or sadness, he encouraged them to step back and examine it. Where is this emotion coming from? Is it based on a false belief or an exaggerated perception of reality? By observing our emotions in this way, we can separate the feeling from the reaction and choose how to respond with wisdom and restraint. One of the Stoic exercises for developing this skill is to pause and reflect before reacting to a situation. When something triggers an emotional response, instead of reacting immediately, take a moment to ask yourself, what's really happening here? Is the situation truly as bad as it seems, or am I simply reacting based on my perception of it? This pause gives you the time to adjust your perspective, to choose a response that aligns with your values, and to prevent yourself from being swept up by impulsive emotions. This practice of perspective is especially powerful in our relationships. Often, we get upset when others behave in ways we don't like or don't understand. But when we view these situations from a Stoic perspective, we can see that other people's actions are outside of our control. We can't change them, but we can choose how we respond. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, we can respond with patience, understanding, and compassion. We can see their actions as part of the natural flow of life and use them as an opportunity to practice our own virtues. The Stoics didn't believe in living an isolated, emotionless life. On the contrary, they believed in living fully, but with awareness. By adjusting our perspective, we can face life's challenges with grace, calm, and wisdom. We begin to see the bigger picture and understand that the difficulties we face are part of the human experience. Instead of allowing them to disrupt our peace, we embrace them as opportunities to grow. As you continue through your day, think about how often you get caught up in small frustrations or negative thoughts. How can you shift your perspective? What would happen if you practiced seeing the bigger picture? The next time you feel upset or overwhelmed, take a step back, take a deep breath, and ask yourself, Is this really as important as I think it is? How can I reframe this situation to see it in a more positive light? By practicing perspective, you take the power back from life's external events and reclaim control over your emotional state. You begin to see challenges as opportunities, frustrations as lessons, and difficulties as stepping stones to personal growth. And in that, you find true peace and contentment. As we've explored the various core teachings of Stoicism, from embracing mortality to cultivating self-control and resilience, we now arrive at one of the most powerful and often overlooked practices: the importance of community and interconnectedness. In a world that often emphasizes individual success and independence, the Stoics remind us that we are not isolated beings. Our lives are deeply interconnected with others, and our actions affect the greater community. To live a virtuous life isn't just about our own personal growth. It's also about contributing to the well-being of those around us. For the Stoics, the concept of cosmopolitanism was central. The Stoics believed that all human beings are part of a greater whole, a universal community that transcends borders, cultures, and nations. They argued that we are all citizens of the same world, and our duty is to live in harmony with this larger community. This idea was championed by one of the Stoic philosophers most associated with this view, Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism. Zeno taught that humans, like all other beings in nature, have a role to play in the cosmic order, and that by living virtuously, we contribute to the greater good of humanity. This perspective invites us to look beyond our immediate circle of family and friends, to realize that we are all part of something much larger, something that connects us to every other person on this planet. The Stoics didn't just focus on personal virtue. They emphasized the importance of acting in ways that contribute to the well-being of others. By living justly, with integrity and compassion, we serve the greater good, and in doing so, we fulfill our role as part of this interconnected human community. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, was perhaps the most prominent proponent of this idea. In his meditations, he often reminded himself that his role as emperor wasn't about personal glory or power. It was about serving the Roman people and ensuring the welfare of the empire. He would write, "What is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bee." In other words, what harms the community harms the individual. Marcus understood that his personal peace and growth were inextricably linked to the peace and growth of those around him. This is the essence of the Stoic belief in interconnectedness. Individual well-being cannot be separated from the well-being of the larger community. Now, let's bring this into our own lives. How often do we think about our actions in terms of their impact on others? Stoicism encourages us to consider how our behavior affects the people we interact with, and to live in a way that promotes harmony and justice. This doesn't mean sacrificing our own needs or values for the sake of others, but rather understanding that the pursuit of virtue leads to a better world for everyone. When we live with kindness, fairness, and empathy, we contribute to the collective good, and in doing so, we create a more peaceful and just society. This concept of interconnectedness is particularly important when we face conflicts or disagreements with others. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeing people as obstacles or adversaries, but the Stoics would remind us that all people are part of the same greater community. When we approach others with compassion and understanding, we not only help to resolve conflict, but we also build stronger relationships and contribute to a healthier, more harmonious world. Whether in our families, our workplaces, or society at large, The Stoic principle of interconnectedness encourages us to act with wisdom and kindness, even in difficult situations. Epictetus also spoke about the importance of living in harmony with others. He believed that our role as human beings is to contribute to the greater community and to act in ways that benefit those around us. In his teachings, he often emphasized that we should focus on doing our part to serve others, not for our own gain, but because it is the right thing to do. For the Stoics, living in accordance with nature meant recognizing that our happiness is tied to the happiness of others, and that by contributing to the welfare of the community, we enrich our own lives. In today's fast-paced, individualistic world, it's easy to forget the value of community and collective well-being. We often focus on personal achievements, self-improvement, and success, believing that our happiness depends on our individual accomplishments. But Stoicism teaches us that true fulfillment comes from living in harmony with others, from recognizing our shared humanity and working together to build a better world. One of the most powerful ways to practice this Stoic principle in our daily lives is through empathy. By putting ourselves in the shoes of others, we can better understand their needs, their struggles, and their desires. When we approach others with empathy, we foster compassion, and when we act with compassion, we contribute to the well-being of those around us. Stoicism teaches that by prioritizing the good of others, we ultimately contribute to our own well-being. It's a reminder that we are all in this together, and our happiness is intertwined with the happiness of those we share this world with. Let's take a moment to reflect on how we can live more in tune with the Stoic principle of interconnectedness. How often do we make decisions without considering the impact they may have on others? Whether it's something as simple as how we treat a colleague or something as complex as our role in our community, every action we take has an effect. By consciously choosing to live with wisdom, fairness, and kindness, we align ourselves with the greater good and contribute to a more peaceful and just world. Finally, the Stoics remind us that community is not just about what we give, it's also about what we receive. The act of contributing to others, of living virtuously for the collective good, brings us a sense of fulfillment that no material possession or individual achievement ever can. True contentment is found in the connections we make, the lives we touch, and the positive impact we have on the world around us. As you go about your day, think about how you can practice the Stoic principle of interconnectedness. Whether through acts of kindness, understanding, or simply being present for others, you have the power to create a ripple effect of positive change. By embracing the Stoic belief that we are all part of a larger community, you not only contribute to the well-being of others, but you also enrich your own life with deeper meaning and purpose. We've now journeyed through the core principles of Stoicism: embracing mortality, cultivating resilience, developing self-control, and living in harmony with nature and the community. But what ties all of these teachings together? It's the central idea that the path to peace and fulfillment is found within, not through external circumstances or fleeting desires. Stoicism teaches us that we already have everything we need to live a meaningful, purposeful life. The key is to look inward, develop our virtues, and align ourselves with what truly matters. But here's the thing: Stoicism isn't about being perfect. It's not about living a life free from mistakes, struggles, or emotional upheaval. It's about how we respond to those challenges, how we choose to act, and how we continually work to grow into better versions of ourselves. The Stoic journey is a lifelong process, a daily commitment to living virtuously, to acting with wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation. It's a journey of self-discovery and personal growth, and it's one that can bring lasting peace even in the most difficult of circumstances. As we reflect on the teachings we've explored, let's look back at some of the key takeaways. Embrace the things you cannot control. Life is full of uncertainties, but by focusing on what you can control, your thoughts, actions, and responses, you free yourself from the burden of external events. By practicing the dichotomy of control, you shift your focus to what truly matters. Live in accordance with virtue. The Stoics believed that virtue is the only true good. Wisdom, justice, courage, and moderation are the foundations of a life well lived. By practicing virtue every day, you align yourself with your highest values and contribute to the greater good. Practice mindfulness and reflection. Reflection allows us to examine our thoughts and actions, ensuring that we stay aligned with our values and growth. By taking time each day to pause and reflect, you gain the clarity to respond to life's challenges with greater wisdom. View adversity as an opportunity. Stoicism teaches us to embrace difficulties as opportunities for growth. Rather than seeing hardships as obstacles, we learn to see them as chances to practice resilience, patience, and self-control. Life's challenges are inevitable, but they are also necessary for our development. Cultivate empathy and interconnectedness. The Stoics understood that we are all part of a greater community. By acting with kindness, justice, and compassion, we contribute to the well-being of others and, in doing so, enrich our own lives. Stoicism encourages us to see the world as a shared space, where our actions have the power to impact the greater good. Contemplate mortality and live fully. Remembering that life is finite encourages us to make the most of every moment. By accepting death as a natural part of life, we can focus on what truly matters. Living virtuously, building meaningful relationships, and contributing to the world around us. The Stoics were not naive or idealistic. They recognized that life is messy, that things don't always go according to plan, and that suffering is part of the human experience. But what they offered was a way to navigate the chaos with grace, wisdom, and peace. They taught us that true happiness doesn't come from external achievements, possessions, or circumstances. Instead, it comes from living in harmony with our values, embracing our challenges as opportunities, and cultivating a sense of inner peace that is not dependent on the ups and downs of life. Now, as we come to the end of our journey through Stoic philosophy, take a moment to reflect on how you can incorporate these teachings into your own life. What virtues do you want to focus on? How can you better manage your responses to life's challenges? In what ways can you contribute to the well-being of your community? These are questions that Stoicism encourages us to ask ourselves each day as we strive to live in alignment with our highest values. Stoicism offers a timeless framework for living a meaningful life, one that is rooted in wisdom, resilience, and virtue. It's not about striving for perfection. It's about making small, consistent efforts to improve ourselves and contribute to the greater good. And while the path of Stoicism may not always be easy, it is one that leads to lasting peace, fulfillment, and clarity. As you move forward, remember the words of Marcus Aurelius. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. You have the power to choose how you perceive the world, how you respond to challenges, and how you live in alignment with your values. By embracing the Stoic teachings we've explored, you'll find that the path to peace and fulfillment is not out there somewhere, but within you. Now, as we close this journey, let the quiet wisdom of Stoic philosophy guide you. And remember that every day is an opportunity to practice these teachings and live more fully in accordance with your highest self. As we come to the end of our journey through the timeless wisdom of Stoic philosophy, remember that the path to peace, resilience, and fulfillment begins within. It's not about seeking external perfection, but about cultivating virtues like wisdom, courage, and self-control in your daily life. Every challenge, every setback, is an opportunity to practice these virtues and grow stronger in your journey. So, as you move forward into tomorrow, take a deep breath, reflect on the lessons we've discussed, and embrace the wisdom of the Stoics. That true happiness and fulfillment come from within, from how we respond to life, and from living in accordance with our highest values. May you find the strength to face life's challenges with grace, the clarity to stay aligned with your values, and the peace that comes from accepting what you can't control while embracing the power you hold over your own mind. Good night, and may your dreams be filled with calm, wisdom, and inner peace.